Taking action isn't doing a spreadsheet. Taking action isn't listening to a podcast. Taking action is not reading a book, okay? Taking action is actually taking action.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
To 180 IQ. And the lower the IQ, the more money they make.
Explain that to people. Okay. They don't get that.
Okay. Guys like yourself.
Yeah, how come I can be successful then?
Okay, well, you could be a lot more successful if you had 30 points less IQ.
Explain that to
Okay. This stuff, everybody knows that you're a engineer, MIT, arguably, if not the best, one of the two best engineering schools, scientific type schools on the planet, okay? And you're a graduate. I've checked. You actually graduated. You have a diploma.
You have checked. By the way, Dan checks everybody out with private investigators.
Whereas a lot of the guys out there that call themselves PhDs, etc., have no PhDs, or they bought it on the internet. But back to you.
Okay.
So you're an engineer by definition. Engineers are analytical. Okay, you get trained to be analytical, and quite simply, if you make a mistake, normally if you're building a bridge, you're building a rocket ship or whatever, a lot of people are going to die. It's not you, so you're trained to be safe.
They train us to be risk averse.
Correct, and risk averse, and
to get excited with all the details and the numbers.
Yeah,
it's like porn for us.
Yeah, and trained to spreadsheet things to death. Okay.
What does that mean for people that don't understand?
Okay, overanalyze it, paralysis by analysis.
Which means you don't have to pull the trigger.
Correct.
You can just analyze it all day.
Yeah, just because you hit the send button or enter button on the computer, doing the numbers again, that's not taking action. So you overanalyze, you study things, you think of all the possible permutations, all the possibilities of what can go wrong, and if you do that enough, you'll come up with enough reasons not to do it at all. Because taking action isn't doing a spreadsheet. Taking action isn't listening to a podcast. Taking action is not reading a book, okay? Taking action is actually taking action.
The man that you just heard is Dan Peña. He's a successful business mentor, coaching mentor, public speaker, author, and so on and so on. So he's known as the $50 billion man. He's quite successful and he's a very great speaker. By the same token, he also is heavily criticized as a charlatan, as a grifter, a money grifter, and I'll say that the criticism against him has some point. However, I think regardless of the fact that he could be all of those things, he's a very smart man, and today I wanted to give a review on a couple of things that he had to say.
QLA works better with people that don't overthink it.
Correct.
And you said, I remember you said this to me, you said it takes the longest time for engineers to get it. But once they get it, they implement it more effectively than other people.
Correct.
And why is that?
Because there are advantages to the skill sets of the engineer. It's no accident that 40% of all the billionaires are engineers. That's not an accident, okay? And once they get it, and once that penny drops or the shoe drops, whatever the saying you want to use, then they just, it's, the world is their oyster.
Yeah. What you taught me to do is to engineer risk into my life.
Correct.
So now every time I'm faced with a decision, or sometimes even when I'm not faced with a decision, I just think, how can I engineer more risk in this situation? Whereas before, I would try my hardest to engineer less risk in the situation, which meant growth was slow. And I played it safe. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter anyways. What, so a couple people thought I failed?
So, according to his words, in order to become rich, you need to engineer risk. Well, the first part hurts a little bit because he says the engineers are poor and we are geeks and analysts, and myself, I'm an engineer, so it hurts a little bit to her. But at the same time, he actually has a point on the good things and the bad things. As an engineer, I can relate to that. But very important when he says that you need to engineer risk, and something that I actually do every single day, and I wasn't aware of that until Dan mentioned it. And today we are going to talk about how can you engineer risk within Venezuela. So, as a good engineering geek that I am, I'm going to do a SWOT analysis regarding Venezuela. If you're from abroad, or in my case, I'm within Venezuela, and see, the strengths and where are all the bad things. Okay, let's start with the strengths of the country. beautiful, well-located country with a lot of future, with a lot of natural resources, with great people, with a lot of upside. Also, compared to the rest of the world, is that Venezuela doesn't have this leverage. It's not an over-leveraged economy. On the government sector, it is, but on the private and households, basically we don't have debt, so we are not susceptible to these waves on the economy, like for instance in the United States and many countries around the world, where everyone is over leveraged, so they can lose their homes, their businesses, their credit card debt can hurt them. So on that particular case, I like this fact in Venezuela, so you can grow up without further growing down, because there's not much down that you can go with Venezuela. So the weakness of Venezuela, the W, the SWOT analysis, are the bureaucracy is awful, a lot of restrictions, the authorities are not the best, it's not the best political climate. It's better than most people think, but it goes on the after sheet. So there's a lot of bad things in Venezuela, but it's mostly the bureaucracy, the authorities, the frictions, but still you can manage that until a certain degree. So now the opportunities. Venezuela has a lot of upside because all of the strengths that it has. Venezuela historically is always been a rich country for Latin American standards, rich on resources, and also a cool country to be that has value. I mean, it's a cool country to visit, nice beaches, nice landscapes, nice people, fun place to be. So there is a lot of opportunities. And since the opportunities are not as clear because, the bad news on CNN, on BBC and Al Jazeera, all that kind of stuff, the mainstream media, that until a certain degree there are true bad things, but most of the bad things happened just a few years ago. The country is very impoverished, I have to say, but the risk of Venezuela is not as great as you see on mainstream media. The thing is, you have to know what you're doing, and also if your profile fits you, because if you don't provide value to the country, you don't have any particular skills, you don't have capital to invest, and so on and so on. You have a quick passport to visit Venezuela, so there's nothing here for you. You have to acknowledge that. But on that fact, if you have a very particular skill that you can leverage using the opportunities and the strengths of Venezuela, you might do something here. Or you can just speculate on the future. So you might, on the future, speculate, which I believe the future is going to be great. It's going to be way better than we have right now, to say the least. 5-10 years or so. So it's not a get-rich-quick scheme that you're going to do in the country. But if you invest in the future, you might get something done, something great that you might not be able to accomplish on your home country. And lastly, let's talk about the threats that Venezuela has. Of course, you as an investor, as an international. Well, the rule of law is very discretionary, to say the least. So you have to manage it, not avoid it, manage it. If you want to avoid it and you're not a risk taker, well, just don't do it. That's it. The other thing is regarding bureaucracy. A bureaucratic hurdle can severely damage your project in Venezuela, so something that you have to manage. And of course, the biggest boogeyman is a return to communism and Marxism in Venezuela. We have Marxist ideology implemented by Hugo Chavez on the early 2000s. Still, Venezuela was very rich, mostly for the oil production, and then that got destroyed. And right now, since the past 5 years or so, Nicolas Maduro, the current president of Venezuela, has done kind of a 180 to more of a, neoliberal capitalism thing going on. It's low, steady, but it's more of a free market, approach that we had like 7 or 8 years ago. So maybe the current government or a future government, which I hardly doubt, is going to turn back to Marxism, socialism. Well, the thing is, in order to implement socialism, Marxism, communism, you need money, you need a lot of capital. And in Venezuela, there is not enough capital in order to implement a Marxist regime because the means of production, they're not being destroyed completely, but are severely diminished. And that's the main issue. That's why actually the government itself wants more of a free market capitalism approach on a lesser degree. It's not going to be Singapore or New Zealand, but it's going to be better than, I don't know, Cuba, Argentina, well, in case before Milei, of course, and all of these autocratic regimes that are close to the market. In Venezuela, it's not the case. We have imports, exports, but still, figuring some things out. So the sentiment for the future is positive. It's very positive. But right now, there are some hurdles and some threats that might affect your business or your endeavor in Venezuela.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.